Thanks for watching The Hot Zone. We're talking about South Africa today, so stay tuned.
This is The Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hi there, I'm Chuck Holton, and thanks for watching The Hot Zone. Man, if you've been keeping up with our podcast over the last couple of weeks, we have been everywhere. I've been in like a dozen countries in the last 14 days, all over Europe, Morocco, and doing a lot of reporting on the migration issue. But here's the problem. There's so many crises going on in the world right now, I just can't keep up with them all. We need to talk about Haiti. We need to talk especially about South Africa. What's happening there right now? It's zombie apocalypse. If you see the footage coming out of South Africa right now, it'll make the hair stand on end because it is unbelievably violent. We're seeing the absolute meltdown of a country right now in South Africa. Now, as you know, probably, if you've been following the podcast for a while, I went to South Africa, it was a couple years ago now. And while I was there, I met a bunch of amazing people who are helping to try to spread the word about what's happening in South Africa. And it's an important message. And I've been saying this for a while. I get a lot of flack about it from Media Matters and all these jackasses on the left because what I've been saying is that we need to look at South Africa and see the United States. What happens in South Africa is coming to the United States if we don't get a handle on the Black Lives Matter idiots, on the Antifa idiots, on all these people who are trying to tear America apart and try to tear down the system that we have in the United States and divide us by race. Now, in South Africa, the race divisions go deep and wide and have been going on for centuries. And it started back with apartheid. I got a really interesting look at apartheid while I was there in South Africa. And I think what we need to remember whenever we look at things like that happened in history is that those people were no better or worse than we are today. So the people that instituted apartheid, they were not monsters. They were trying to fix a problem that they had, and the fix they came up with was pretty horrific. We could give example after example of the way our government today tries to fix problems, and their fix is often worse than the problem. And so it's something that's been going on forever, and it's going to keep going on. But, and I'm not saying that we should justify anything that happened during apartheid. I'm just saying that the people who put that in place were well-meaning, and we got to be careful about well-meaning politicians. So look at what's happening in South Africa with an eye toward America, because Black Lives Matter and their ilk are doing their best to bring what's happening in South Africa to the United States. So I reached out to this guy that I met the last time I was in South Africa, Ian Cameron. He's up in the way northern part of the country at the moment, but he is a font of knowledge about the issues in South Africa and why they are manifesting in the way that they are. So check out our conversation right now. For people in America who are like, what's going on with this zombie apocalypse in South Africa? They see the images on TV of the rioting and looting. Tell us how that got started and what's happening now.
So basically, when Jacob Zuma was sentenced to go to prison about a week or two ago, there was major unhappiness by actually quite a small group of people that support him. There were protests outside his Nkandla homestead in KwaZulu-Natal. It went as far as people posing as Nkontu Sizwe, which is the old ANC military wing, as veterans of MK, that were discharging firearms into the air openly in that area. Obviously, very worrying scenes, and this spilt over into the retail sector in the KwaZulu-Natal province right after that, to the point where literally, I'll tell you more about it in detail now, but we've lost billions of rands worth of businesses. Long story short, it's now being confirmed by the ruling party's National Executive Committee and by the security cluster that internally there's major conflict and there's major misalignment, which has caused for this to occur.
Now, Jacob Zuma is no saint by any stretch. And it makes me wonder why him being put in jail has caused so much unrest. I mean, Jacob Zuma is a polygamist. He's an accused rapist. He's been indicted and implicated in money laundering and other corruption, tons of financial misdealings throughout his government as president of South Africa for 9 years. He's been, just implicated and involved in lots of double dealing and backroom deals with the Gupta family, the very wealthy billionaires from India, who are now in big trouble in South Africa. He even has been, we have video of him actually on camera in a stadium full of people singing a song that says, "Kill the Boer, kill the white people, and make them run." Okay, so the question is, what is it about Jacob Zuma that all of a sudden, when he gets sentenced to jail for 15 months for contempt of court, just because he literally would not come to court to testify, why is that causing so much violence across the country?
To give you background in terms of the rule of law in South Africa, there's a definite double standard. And when it came to Jacob Zuma, he went to court several times before. He refused then to testify at the Zondo Commission regarding state capture. And the whole thing just became one big joke to so many people, because people said, but wait a minute, if I am an ordinary law-abiding citizen, I would have been in jail by now. And this guy just kept on going. And it's not like there's no evidence. I mean, everyone knows that he is corrupt. Everyone knows that Jacob Zuma is a blatant criminal and has a blatant disregard for law and order. And now this faction fight inside the ANC has caused anarchy in big parts of the country. Billions of rands have gone to waste. And obviously, we are very worried about the future. The country is not as stable as it should be at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, to me, for what I'm seeing, it looks like a failed state. I mean, what I'm seeing are the police are completely overwhelmed and ineffective. Now they have just I see deployed 25,000 troops to try to quell the rioting around the country. What do you know about that?
So to start with, there are photos doing the rounds, and it's confirmed this isn't fake news or anything, of troops that don't even have magazines for their rifles. So they're walking around with empty rifles. They're not uniformed properly. They don't have fuel for the vehicles on service. So it's good in terms of the fact that there's more manpower, but the actual efficiency is a major issue. In the last 24 hours, the South African Police Service lost just over 800,000 rounds of ammunition. In KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban, there was a container that came in from abroad, and it was counted yesterday. And just a few hours later, after the police had to have been guarding the container and that they sealed the container off, 800,000 rounds of ammunition was looted. The police then managed to supposedly recover 11,000 rounds. And the Minister of Police, Minister Bheki Cele, which was previously a big Zuma fan, comes up and he announces that they've had this major success with recovering ammo, but he forgets to mention that it was the police that lost the ammo in the first place. So I think you're 100% right. I think there are many, many things in South Africa that indicates a failed state. And I think we need to stop dancing around the fact. What has happened in the last few days was you can call terrorism. The fact that an organized faction within a political party, because of to try and achieve some form of personal or ideologic political gain, organize themselves in a way that they influence the intelligence community in South Africa in order to destabilize large parts of the country, and they did it successfully, is very, very worrying. And that definitely does indicate a failed state. I think the cherry on top is that the minister, several ministers tell us, but no, our spies and our intelligence services did the best they could, which is utter nonsense, because the South African Police Service alone spends less than 5% of their budget on crime intelligence. That is very worrying. That means they have got no information or intelligence to work on in order to prevent crime or to detect crime before it happens.
So we're seeing literally hundreds of thousands of screaming thugs destroying not just retail establishments, malls, and even one of the malls that I visited while I was there, but they're also going after warehouses that hold much of the food that is going to be required to feed South Africa. What is going to happen to South Africa without all of these supplies?
So let's start with that. The biggest fuel refinery in South Africa has been closed temporarily, and they have stopped production of fuel, which means that large parts of the country are already experiencing fuel shortages. Some of the supermarket groups in South Africa have stopped transporting food, especially in the KwaZulu-Natal area, but obviously it's putting pressure on supply chain. One of the major retail outlets in South Africa, in fact, I think it's actually one of the top, probably in the top 3 or 4, has lost just over 350 shops in the country since the looting started. The Spar Group alone, just in KwaZulu-Natal on the past Sunday night, lost 50 stores just in one province. This goes to say that not only is it an organized attempt, the first excuses we heard was people are hungry. And people are actually making jokes now, saying that it's a new South African proverb to say that I'm hungry, let's steal a TV. Because we're seeing pictures and videos coming from some of these areas where people can't even fit the couch that they stole into their house. And they've got a 70,000 Rand couch standing outside their house in the middle of the street just to have it. And it's this absolute audacity, arrogance that we're seeing, that it's almost accepted. And the interesting thing here is, Chuck, that if it wasn't for communities of all backgrounds in the country, rich and poor, coming together and saying, we are going to change this, we are going to step in, we will maintain law and order, I think that the carnage would have been far worse.
Yeah, so we've got over 70 people dead already. And what we're seeing is, like you say, communities starting to stand up and protect their own areas. We're seeing shop owners, we're seeing people in neighborhoods form neighborhood watches and start to protect their own areas. How is that going, and what resources are available to people in South Africa in terms of self-defense?
So I think it's important to say that already we're seeing an onslaught from the ANC ruling party in government saying that people need to step back. It is their job to enforce the law. People need to step back. But they weren't there in the first place. Just this afternoon, the mayor of eThekwini, Durban, which is the capital of the KwaZulu-Natal province, arrived in a place where community members were standing on a street corner. They were patrolling. They were making sure that only residents gain access. And he said to them they had to leave. And within minutes, big amounts of people from the community flooded the streets and just said, we will not leave. You need to leave because you didn't stop this before it happened. And he ended up fleeing. But I think the crazy thing about this is, people have a perception that it's only a certain type of community. What we are seeing is that the taxi associations, which is a major role player in the entire South African context, have come to the party saying that we will not allow this. We will protect shopping malls, we will protect retailers and so forth. People need food, they need fuel, and we want business to continue as usual. In terms of self-defense, major challenge that the government do not do anything to provide additional support to communities. In fact, the only province that really go out of their way, and it's completely evident if you visit them, is the Western Cape. But that's a discussion for another day. I need to really commend them for the fantastic way in which they have handled this. But if you look at the rest of the country and all the provinces governed by the ANC, there is more or less nothing to support. So in terms of reserve police, between 2010 and 2018, actually 2019, South Africa lost 80% of its reservists. That means 60,000 reserve cops are not on streets anymore. They can't work anymore. So that's the first thing. So now people are on their own. Now they are trying to stop people from bearing arms within the framework of the law. They want to change legislation. And obviously very worrying if you hear the police have, in a space of between probably 12, 15 years, lost over 30,000 firearms, and lost more than 10 million rounds of ammunition in the same time period. So the South African government can be seen most likely as being one of the biggest suppliers of firearms to criminals in the country. As I said now, in the past 24 hours, they lost almost 1 million rounds of ammo, and yet still they want to disarm communities. So what we are saying is that communities must organize themselves. They need to plan, they need to mobilize, they need to work together. Legislation allows more than enough room for them to do exactly that, and we will support them wherever we can.
And this is not a racial thing in any sense of the term. However, one thing that we've continued to hear more about is the spate of farm attacks against white farmers, specifically, oftentimes encouraged by government officials, encouraged by police. And you've had something to do with trying to help farmers defend themselves. Has there been any movement in that since last you and I spoke?
Yeah, so I think it's been overshadowed by the whole COVID thing, lockdown, everything. We've actually seen that in terms of the last 10 to 15 years, it seems that there's a bit of a stabilizing effect happening, which is terrible that we speak of it that way because it shouldn't happen at all. But it is very clear that the farming community are fighting back. We do see an increase in the last 2 to 3 years of farm workers being attacked as well, more than what we did previously, and we do see people fighting back more often. You do hear stories far more now of attackers being shot and killed by victims, saying that we're not just going to sit back and watch you hurt our families. Interesting, what we heard yesterday, confirmed information from the security cluster, was that the Zuma grouping that now obviously are losing momentum in South Africa with this whole riot and looting situation, want to channel it towards rural areas to try and get some form of a racial tension going, especially targeting white farmers. And the worrying thing about this is that I think people underestimate how well the rural communities are organized in South Africa. If there's one community that I know for a fact you do not want to mess with it on a large scale, it is farmers and farm workers, because they stand together, they work together really, really well. And compared to the rest of the country, we can learn a lot from how they combat crime proactively. And even government do not have the infrastructure that farmers have built over years because they have been in such danger to defend themselves and their families.
Interesting. That's a really interesting information there. Where do you see this going? Is it tapering off already, or is this going to continue? Is it tapering off because they've already looted everything, or what are we going to see in the weeks ahead?
I think in most of the country, it will start tapering off. In KwaZulu-Natal, not so much yet. It is still going really, really rough in some areas. Many people have evacuated houses. Those that can afford to evacuate have done so. Others are living in fear. Many aren't sleeping. Gunshots every night outside their houses. People that, normal middle-class families that never thought something like that would be so close to them are now experiencing things you only hear or see on movies. And now suddenly they are evacuating. So people are flying out to different provinces. I think the amount of people that are going to leave the country, especially from KZN after this whole ordeal, is going to really be shocking, because this has confirmed so many things that we've seen and heard about the ANC over years. And they have just proven to the country that they are corrupt and incompetent. And I think in KwaZulu-Natal, the faction fight is not over yet. I think we can expect more. And we're already seeing that residential areas are slowly but surely being targeted more, especially in some of the coastal holiday towns in the KwaZulu-Natal province.
Wow. Well, stay safe there. I think you're in one of the safer parts of the country right now, aren't you? You're a very rural area up there.
Yeah, and it's very peaceful in the north of the country now. I arrived here today, and it's fantastic. Communities are well organized. They've got good relationships, and they communicate openly. So currently, it's safe in the north of the country.
Well, good. Maybe I'll come up there and see you if I get a chance.
You're more than welcome. That would be great.
I'd love to do it. Okay. Well, God bless you, and thanks for talking with me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck. Keep well.
All right, folks. Thanks for watching The Hot Zone. I'm Chuck Holton. We'll see you next time. You can reach me on Locals. That's chuckholton.locals.com. You can subscribe. You can even support the podcast there. And if you're a supporter over on Patreon, I suggest you move to Locals because Patreon supports Black Lives Matter, and I don't want to give them even a dime. So if you absolutely can, go support the podcast on Locals, chuckholton.locals.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2021.